Good evening and welcome to the City of Oxnard Planning Commission special meeting for Thursday, August 26, 2021. Time is 6:04 p.m. Quick housekeeping item in accordance with Government Executive Order N-29-20. Members of the commission and staff will be participating via teleconference. As shown on the agenda and online, please email all written public comments at oxnard.org. For those wishing to speak, may visit oxnard.org/city-meetings to fill out the speaker form or call 805-385-7878 by 2 p.m. the day of the meeting. For my colleagues, please use the raise hand feature when you speak. Once you have been called on, please then click the hand again to lower. When making a motion or seconding, please clearly state your last name for the record. Because the meeting is electronic, all votes will be done by roll call. Lastly, for presenters, when needed to advance to the next slide, please clearly state next slide. We'll now go to our Madam Secretary for the roll call, please.
Chair Chavez,
Here.
Vice Chair Ovejo.
He was here.
Yeah, he was. Commissioner Connolly,
Here.
Commissioner Meyer,
Here.
Commissioner Nash,
Present.
Commissioner Sanchez,
Here.
Vice Chair Ovejo, Commissioner Lopez. Commissioner Lopez is absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. And then once our vice chair joins, we'll make a note of it. We'll now move into our next item, which is our Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Roselle, would you mind leading us this evening, please?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
Flag
of
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that, Mr. Roselle. We do not have anything for our consent agenda. So we'll go ahead and move into our ex parte declarations for hearing item. Commissioner Connolly.
None.
Thank you. Commissioner Meyer.
None.
Thank you. Commissioner Nash.
Yes, I just want to say that I have had several meetings with Henry Casillas as part of the Oxnard Community Planning Group, but none over this project specifically.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sanchez.
No.
Thank you, and no from myself. So we'll go ahead and move into our only public hearing item. Project name is the Encanto.
Chair Chavez, if we could really quick, I believe that we skipped over the public comments on items not on the agenda. So I just wanted to backtrack quickly.
I apologize and thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Colwitz. So we'll go ahead and move into public comments. This is an opportunity for the public to address the commission on any matters that are not appearing on the agenda. The commission cannot engage in any action for items not on the agenda, and each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Madam Secretary, do we have any public speakers for items not on the agenda?
No, we don't.
Thank you for that. And thank you again, Mr. Colwitz. So we'll now officially go into item F1, which is the Encanto Home Subdivision Planning and Zoning Permit number 20-500-05 Special Use Permit for Planned Development, Planning and Zoning Permit 20-300-04 Tentative Subdivision Map for Track 6054, and Planning and Zoning Permit 20-535-03 Density Bonus, a request to demolish existing infrastructure consisting of modular classroom buildings and site improvements serving the former Oxnard Union High School's adult education program. Subdivide the project 4.10 acres site into 27 lots ranging from 3838 to 9946 square feet in size, dedication of approximately 1 acre of land for the benefit of the public right of way, allow for the construction of 27 detached single-family dwelling units. The project also includes a request for ministerial approval for a density bonus permit to allow for 23% density bonus to increase the maximum number of units from 22 units to 27. The project site is located at 1101 and 1111 West Second Street within the residential lowland use designation, single-family residential R1 zone, and is in the Fremont South neighborhood. This is filed on behalf of this is filed by Henry Casillas on behalf of the Oxnard Union High School District. Our city staff person is Juan Martinez, Associate Planner. The recommendation to the Planning Commission is A, find the project to be exempt from CEQA pursuant to sections 15.332 infill development projects and CEQA guidelines. Adopt a resolution 2021 XX approving planning and zoning permits number 20-50005 special use permit for development plan and 20-53503 density bonus subject to certain finding and conditions, and adopt a resolution 2021 XX recommending the city council approve planning and zoning permit number 20-30004 tentative track map for track number 6054 subject to certain findings and conditions. As a reminder to the public and my colleagues that a pre-recorded staff presentation was posted to the city's website and YouTube channel, and a full text of the description of this project can be found on the city's website. I just wanted to quickly summarize that. We'll now move to staff for a quick summary of the project and to provide any additional information necessary. Mr. Martinez.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. We don't have anything to add. We did post the staff report and the presentation. We're ready for community comments. We did receive just a few minutes ago correspondence from Barbara Macri Ortiz regarding affordable housing, but she is joining us today, so I'll defer her question and thoughts for when she's ready. Other than that, we're ready to answer any questions. I know that Henry has joined us and he's ready to answer any questions that the commission may have or the community. So other than that, we're ready. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Martinez. And just a reminder to all that are on the call, if you can please mute your microphones unless you're actually speaking. Mr. Casillas, do you have a presentation for us tonight, or are you just available for questions? Staff, can we mute the other members? And then Mr. Casillas, you are muted still.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm just here to basically answer any questions you may have. So happy to answer any questions that you all may have about the project. We're very excited about the project, by the way. We just wrapped up our H and Palm Street project. Those are the 13 craftsman style homes there on H and Palm. And concept with that project, we actually drove through the Oxnard Henry Historic District and looked at the Spanish Revival homes there, and kind of took that as an inspiration to develop this project. Actually, there's a specific house on 5th Street. I think it's a little bit down the street from F and 5th. And we actually use that house as our main inspirational house. So we're very excited to bring the project along and here to answer any questions that you may have.
I appreciate that, Mr. Casillas. Thank you. Staff, if you can please note that our vice chair just joining us. If there's no objection from my commissioners, I would actually like to have questions go to both staff and applicant at the same time, if there's no objections. Seeing and hearing none. Commissioners, any questions on the project for either staff or the applicant? Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. I have questions on some of the conditions, and this is for Mr. Martinez. Condition number 29 about the developer installing sod or other alternative drought tolerant landscaping. I'm sad to see that sod is still being required in the front yards of these projects. As we all know, we're in a serious drought condition, and sod is by far the most water wasteful of all landscaping. So I would like us to see, I would like to see us move forward and, if possible, offer the home buyer, some alternatives. If they want sod, they can have sod or whatever the default landscaping that the developer has planned for, or if they want, they can go with a more drought tolerant xeriscape type landscaping. So, Mr. Martinez, do you know if the city has any plans in moving in that direction?
Commissioner Nash, that condition is a general condition. The plans and the landscaping and the irrigation does get scrutinized a little bit more at time of plan check. There is also a condition 24 that makes reference to the offering of low water usage without having to pay an additional cost for the redesign of those landscaping settings and materials. So again, it does get a little bit more scrutinized because there's also water conservation measures. This one we got some minor comments specifically for the arborist report and the proposed trees. But when it comes to the ground cover in the mix, there will be additional reviews during the plan check review. So there's an opportunity there that may cause the percentages between sod and some of the other plant mixes to change to comply with those requirements prior to releasing the building permit.
Thank you for that. Moving on to condition number 36 that deals with the resale of the affordable units. I'm a little concerned about the way this is structured, because the whole purpose of inclusionary housing is to provide affordable housing. But upon reading this, it's my perception that the buyer of an affordable unit can go ahead and sell his unit as long as he shares the profits with the city. I'm not really crazy about that, but what does the city? I guess this would be from Mr. Ramirez from Housing. Where would those shared profits go into? Do they go into an affordable housing fund that would provide for replacement affordable housing, or could you enlighten me a little bit about how that money would be divided? Where it would go to in the city?
Sure. Emilio Ramirez, Housing Director. First of all, I apologize not being on screen, and I'm actually outside and a little double booked, so I apologize for that. The equity share structure would permit a person to sell the home on the condition that they contribute, if you will, the valuation or the increased valuation of the property in an equity share component. So that amount that the city would collect would go into in a fund that the city uses to build other affordable housing.
Okay, great. I'm very glad to hear that. Moving on to condition number 105, that this project will be right across the street from the proposed campus park. And for, especially for the people on Second Street, I would hope that in the, in the conditions, covenants, and restrictions, that is brought to their attention that people who are visiting the park might very well park in front of their house if parking is allowed on Second Street. So I just want to bring that to the, I don't want to have to at some future meeting hear people complain about people parking in front of their houses to visit campus parks. So I hope that is considered. And that's probably for Mr. Martinez.
Commissioner Nash, did you cite condition 105?
That would be 105.
no.
It just deals with the conditions, covenants, and restrictions.
Mhm.
So that's where you bring things up about conditions in the project, and just like the buyers are being made aware of the fact that there is an airport, almost right next door, and they will have to deal with the effects of aviation. They also have to deal with the effects of people visiting the park, the campus park. So I'd rather be proactive in this regard. That we notify the home buyers that they may have a parking issue on certain days of the week.
Now, Commissioner Nash, on condition 105, that is actually specific to oversized vehicles, but the city does have an oversized vehicle ordinance and time limitations for parking on public streets.
Okay, you're right. And I just saw the conditions, covenants, and restrictions, and I apologize for not being more specific. Right. I hope that the buyers of the property on Second Street are notified that there may be parking issues. That's the extent of my comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. And I think we can certainly include that we do record a notice of restrictions, a notice of land use and restrictions, and that can certainly be added to the notice that is recorded on title for each of the properties.
Great. Okay, moving on to condition number 188. Dealing with the resurfacing of West 2nd and K Streets. Now, this is something that drives the public crazy, is when you repave a street and then immediately tear it up again. Can't this be better coordinated, that the resurfacing is delayed until the project is completed? And this would be for Mr. Martinez.
Yes, Commissioner Nash, that's the intent. The intent was to provide notice to the developer that there was a project that was underway. And so the idea is that those can be coordinated for essentially the same issue that you're bringing to the forefront. At the time that this condition was written, I don't know that we had specific dates on when that was going to take place. So I'll take note of that and then maybe just revisit the condition and also the current status is when the project, and definitely I think the developer was on board with coordinating those construction activities to not impact the street or not obviously remove something that had just been put in. So comment is well noted.
Great. Yeah, I would love to see it better coordinated to avoid any destruction of a resurfaced.
Commissioner Nash, if I could address that issue, please.
Yes.
We were informed by the city that the intention is to go ahead and do the grind and overlay in December. So what we're doing on our side because we completely agree with you, what we're doing on our side is we're actually submitting our construction drawings now, early, even though we run a risk of there being further changes down the line. The reason we're doing that is to try to get the construction drawings approved so that we can try to meet that December deadline to install all the physical infrastructure before that grind and overlay is done. So we actually had our first submittal today. We should be getting an email hopefully tomorrow or Monday from the city regarding submitting our civil drawings as well. So we're geared up, we're ready to go. We're trying to get to that timeline so that we don't replicate our work.
Right, great.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Great. I'm just a firm believer in measuring twice and cutting once rather than measuring once and cutting twice. Backtracking to condition number 176. I just have a question for Mr. Martinez. What is the threshold for I'm sorry, I'm hearing some echo. What is the threshold for requiring detention basins for stormwater?
Commissioner Nash, this is Scott Kolitz. I could hop in here. So there's many different standards, but the easiest one is anytime that you're disturbing 10,000 square feet or more, or there's another 5-acre threshold, it kicks in. It kicks in various standards. Clearly, we're going to be well over the 10,000 square foot disturbance. So there is a stormwater compliance component to this project.
But no stormwater detention basin is planned, correct?
Not on this project. No, it's just standard cleaning facilities through low impact development design standards.
Okay, great.
Mr. Nash, if I could address that issue.
Yeah.
It's my understanding from our civil that each property must have its own sort of detention basin. So what we did on H and Palm is we actually made these large areas that were probably, I want to say maybe 8 by 8. We filled those with gravel. We filled those with sand. And then we put a concrete grate over that. So all of the water should be flowing into those individual detention basins to try to catch as much rainfall and water that's going into the soil to replenish the ground level. So each individual house, it's my understanding, will have its own sort of system in it.
Okay, great. Thank you. And just as kind of a general question, comment under the police conditions, do we have a representative from the police department here tonight?
Commissioner Nash, no, Scott Swenson, our police representative, isn't joining us here tonight, but if you ask away, I can try and answer the question. He joined us in all the DAC meetings and some of the sit-down meetings that we had with the developer. So,
well, I'm just a believer in video surveillance of public streets, and I'm just curious as to whether or not the police department has any plans on moving in that direction, putting video cameras on top of light standards or whatever, just to monitor the comings and goings of vehicles on our public streets, in order to have a record of who comes into and out of the neighborhood.
Commissioner Nash, this is Scott Kolbitz. I could respond to that as well. The police department has started doing that in key locations of the city. It's a matter of various resources, both in terms of the camera equipment itself, as well as the lines that would feed into a system like that.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you. That concludes my statement, and thank you to staff and Mr. Casillas.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash, for your comments. We'll now go to Vice Chair Rejo.
Thank you very much, Chair. Apologies on my belatedness to the meeting. I was here on time and then I got booted out. I do have 3 questions. The first primarily for the applicant, the last 2 primarily for staff. The first in regards to referring to page 6, how was the formulation of setting aside the 7 for affordability determined in terms of the low/moderate split? I just want to know if it's primarily market, there's a formula you're working on, something standard. Thank you. And then I'll go to my next 2 after this.
I'm still trying to figure that out myself. I think that's a question for the housing department. We're just trying to comply with what they're requesting of us. Originally, we came in as a project with 5 moderate income units, And since then, the city has modified that to 4 moderate and 3 low. It's a little bit strange for me because we had a community meeting, several community meetings where we came into the community with that benchmark. So that benchmark has since been changed. And I think it has to do with the interpretation of both the density bonus law and the local city ordinance. That's my understanding. But I think the housing director can probably provide more insight than I can.
Thank you. And yes, if staff could, thank you.
Yeah, commissioners, this is Scott Kolwitz. I'll jump into this one first. And I know that Emilio Ramirez is also on the phone with us. So if he wants to join me on the explanation, that would be welcomed. But how I would describe this is whenever we have a project that is over 10 units in size, there is a requirement that projects need to follow our local standards, our local inclusionary ordinance, which requires that 10% of the units be dedicated at an affordability level. A for sale product requires for those units to be lower. So right off the bat, there was a requirement that 3 of the units on the project site would need to be provided at the lower income level. As the applicant submitted their application to us and requested various density bonus, requested a density bonus as well as concessions, we reviewed state density bonus law as well as our own local regulations. State density bonus law is what we followed on this project. In order to qualify for 3 concessions, as has been requested with this project, the applicant was required to provide 30% of their units at the moderate level. And when we do that math, that gets us to 7 units total at the moderate level. The density bonus that they're looking for, essentially I'm forgetting the numbers right off the top of my head, if it's 23 or 28% density bonus. The 23 is what my team is reminding me. That required 28% of the units to also be provided at the affordability, the moderate level, if you will. Taking all those, breaking it down into maybe plain English, staff calculated that 7 units needed to be provided at a moderate level based on state density bonus, and then based on our local regulations, 3 of them needed to be provided at a lower income unit. Our regulations do allow stacking, if you will, where if the developer wished to provide some of their moderate units at a deeper level of affordability, we would honor that. So that's where we get the 4 units available at moderate and 3 at the lower income level. As we apply various state laws and local regulations, there's different nuances to each of those in terms of the conditions. With the applicant seeking to provide 7 in a combined format of 4 at moderate and 3 at the lower income level, we do follow, in the way the conditions are written, we do follow the implementing ordinances, if you will. So if that was too much, I think the takeaway message really is, as staff, community development, housing, as well as our legal department has looked at the regulations, we're confident that the number of units that are being provided is what is required for this project, which again, 7 total, 4 at moderate, 3 at lower income. And
thank you. Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Kowitz, for that detailed explanation. Yes, the 3 I readily understood. I just didn't know where that extra 4 had to come from, and I didn't know if that was a developer or staff. So appreciate that formula breakdown. I'm a numbers person, and so I was just looking for that formula somewhere. Thank you for that first question explanation. I think if I can move on to my next 2 questions in regards to attachment B. My first is in regards to the existing runway protection zone map. The project seems to touch or abut the runway protection zone. Was there an approval needed from the relevant airport body? And if so, was it given or were there concerns? And if I can just go to my third question, again, in attachment B, in regards to the fire hydrant, it appears when looking at the fire hydrant map, the 150-foot radius shown, it appears that there's a gap on West 2nd Street that doesn't cover lots 6 through 10. Am I mistaken? And I'm looking also in reference with condition 75 that a map should be shown with a 150-foot radius to show that coverage.
I'm happy to give a response for the first item regarding the runway protection zone. Based on the design of this project, the property and the homes to be constructed on them do not are not affecting the runway protection zone. If you look at the subdivision map, the several lots right in the corner are substantially larger, and the homes are proposed to be set back from the edge of the property there. So that is the only small portion of the property that is within the runway protection zone. Because the houses are not to be constructed within that zone, the airport has no approval over this project. And if the Planning Commission approves this tonight, it would be final unless it's appealed.
Thank you, Mr. Rosell.
Vice Chair, if I may add, we did work with the Ventura County Airport District. We did confirm the longitude and latitude of that RPZ area. And we worked very closely with our civil engineer to make sure that we were within the correct parameters of the RPZ.
Okay, thanks for that confirmation. I just know that when it's very close or touching, a few inches could invite, I guess, a lawsuit. I've just been reading about that in other jurisdictions. So thank you for that confirmation on the legal basis and in regards to the county. And if I could have someone answer my question in regards to the fire hydrant, I greatly appreciate that, primarily to staff.
Well, from our side, it's my understanding that we have full coverage. I know
the,
that we will be
The
installing.
plan that I used to identify the areas that I was focusing on was essentially the plan that was a little bit more detailed, and it was the fire hydrant plan that was prepared and circulated for review, which included the review of the fire department. The fire department did note or identify a condition, which is condition number 75, and it states that provide a hydrant within 150 of all portions of the building exterior walls, provide a plan with hydrants located 150-foot radius.
Mr. Martinez.
Center to demonstrate coverage. That is a special condition, and I'm guessing that it's a condition that was put in by the fire department because the plan that was submitted didn't meet the 100
Mr. Martinez.
minimum distance. So again, I think I used a plan that was circulated for review. There is a special condition that will ultimately require that they demonstrate those distances. So the location will very likely change to fulfill that requirement.
Okay, I'm sorry, Vice Chair, I'm gonna jump in real quick.
Yes.
I need everyone to please keep their mics muted until they're speaking. I know that the production office, they are unmuted and we are getting an echo and distorted sound coming from the service center. So if you're not speaking, please keep muted. Until then, I would greatly appreciate, and I'm sure the public would appreciate it also, that they can actually hear what is the information that's being put out. Are all the commissioners okay with Mr. Martinez's response, or does it need to be repeated?
Mr. Chair, I apologize, but I missed at least a third of that, and I would appreciate even just a summarization. I feel like I got the gist, but I could be misinterpreting. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm seeing some head nods of yes. So Mr. Martinez, if you can just give a brief summary of what you just stated for the commission, I would appreciate that.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. Yes, the plan that I used to illustrate the areas of the project site was the plans that were circulated for review. the police department, I'm sorry, the fire department did notice that the project or the location of where the fire hydrants were illustrated didn't meet the 150-foot radius marker. So the fire department did write a special condition, which is identified in your packet as condition number 75, that the fire hydrants do have to be located to fulfill and meet that 100-foot radius circle. So there is a special condition to address that, and what will ultimately be built is probably going to be in a different location to, again, satisfy the fire department's needs.
So if I can follow up, the map that is shown to us planning commissioners is just a preliminary or a tentative mapping of the fire hydrants, but no matter what, when the project is built, that condition 75 will be met.
Correct. So the plan that isn't going to be, this isn't going to be, the plan that I used isn't accurate in terms of the finished location of where the fire hydrants are going to go. I don't know if Henry has any information or if he had the one-on-one meeting with the fire department to talk about. I think the fire department only asked for 2 new fire hydrants. So in the event that there's a need for another one, or there's, that may also be a need. And I think the reason I referenced 2 is because that's what was proposed on the plan. But again, ultimately, that condition number 75 will supersede the locations and the placement of those fire hydrants.
Thank you for your answer. I have to admit that doesn't totally satisfy my concerns, but I'll take your explanation under advisement as we go into deliberation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for,
Um,
yes, Mr. Casillas.
Yeah, it's my understanding that we do have full coverage. I can't remember right now how many new fire hydrants we are installing, but I know that we're actually replacing some fire hydrants and then we're installing new ones as well. So it's my understanding that by the existing and with the new ones that are going in, we will have that full coverage. But as soon as we have an updated map, we'll make sure we forward that to everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Casillas. We'll now move to Commissioner Sanchez.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. Mr. Casillas, welcome back. Just want to ask a couple of questions having to do with the project. And one of them has to do with the size of the development, the individual houses. So was that your first choice to do it at that size, or were you exploring larger houses or anything like that, a larger house?
Well, one of the lessons that we learned on the project across the street on H and Palm, that was a really interesting project to go through during the COVID era, simply because right in the middle of the project, our lumber cost went up, 300%. Copper went up. I mean, it was insane. So that was a lesson learned there. The other thing that was able to help us there was that the market moved, and we were able to sell them at a little better price point to recoup some of that cost. But I'm a lifelong City of Oxnard resident. I was born and raised here. So I'm very sensitive to pricing for the city. So for us, it's a very difficult dance in the sense that we're trying to bring a product that is a quality product, right? But at the same time is affordable. So by going with the larger unit, we would have to sell it for a lot higher. And I grew up in Rose Park. We lived in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. I think it was so. And looking at the neighborhood there, looking at specifically the properties on H Street, where we were building the Heritage Home Project, I kept looking across the street and saying, geez, those houses there are about, 1,100 to 1,200 square feet. They're 3-bedroom, 2-bath. There's nothing wrong with them. They're great homes, so why don't we replicate that? Why can't we go back and do something that's similar, them as affordable as we can for Oxnard families to be able to try to get into these. So it really is for us a combination of providing, value, that middle point there of a nice aesthetic house with a price that is accessible. I mean, who in Southern California does not want to live in a Spanish Revival bungalow home? The doors that we are using are solar powered. But we really think that it's an attractive product. And in doing that, so we try to scale down in order to provide that quality product at a reasonable price. We also were thinking about senior families that, older people who don't want a 2-story house because of their age. So we like the fact that it is a single story and the massing is a little bit low. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, actually it does, because for the last 30 years, I've been living in a house that is about that size. And that's large enough for a family, 3 bedrooms and what have you. Yeah, I think you did a great thing by, pricing it affordably for families, like you mentioned, that it's for families, because, the housing keeps on going up. And so,
Sanchez,
uh-huh.
I apologize for interrupting you. Right now, we're only doing questions. And I appreciate your remarks, but if you don't have further questions, please save those remarks for the deliberation portion.
Okay, sorry about that. I do have a question then. Has to do with the backyard. So the question of the backyard is, so there's going to be a garage back there, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so is the backyard large enough to say if in the future, I don't know how big of a backyard there is back there, but this question is, can you put like an ADU at some point if you want to do something like that?
We actually explored the concept of putting an ADU actually on the site, but we kind of shied away from that because we didn't know how the community would respond to that. Number one, we figured if somebody wants to purchase one of these, state law allows them to do that, so they can. The thing about the backyard, I think I have my architect with me, Nathan York. He may be able to answer that, but I believe, and Nathan can correct me if I'm wrong, that we have a 16-foot setback between the house and the garage. But what we actually did is we included 2 garage doors, one in the alley and one on the side that faces the house. So then that essentially becomes a space. So now you could open up the garage door that's facing the house and you could just exponentially grew your backyard. So if you have a family and you have a get together with all your family, yes, you have 16 feet, but now you open up your garage. Now you got another 442 or 440 square feet available to you. So we thought that by having that combination, we are providing more space. Now that unit, because it's a larger garage, it's 22 by 22, so it's bigger than your standard garage. So that unit can be converted into an ADU, or what I think would be a better idea, personally, would be that a person can actually apply for an ADU and build the ADU above the garage. That way they maintain the parking below, right? And have that flexible space, and they can put the ADU above the garage. And it's my understanding from our structural engineer that that would not really require any modifications to the foundation or the strong walls, because all that physical infrastructure is already there. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanchez. Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Chavez. Yeah, I had a couple of questions just following up on and piggybacking on two of the questions from Commissioner Nash for my better understanding as well. So the first would be regarding landscaping options and a better understanding of what the city's standards are around the landscaping, the options given the concerns about climate change.
So Commissioner
And
Nash, this
extreme
is
drought.
Scott Colwitz. I'll go ahead and jump into this one first and foremost. So as part of our building code process, the model, I'm sorry, my brain is a little slow today. The MWELO regulations, the Model Water Efficiency Landscape Ordinance that the state adopted about 15 years or so ago, it requires us to look at the amount of water that a property is using. And landscaping is very much part of that calculation. The way that the conditions are written for this project, it gives an ability for an applicant to consider what landscaping they want in consideration of the other water uses they have on the property. There definitely is a trend, and our conditions lead to this trend or allow this trend for drought-tolerant landscaping to be included. And there are various sods that are out there that are drought tolerant as well. So just because we wrote sod in the regulations, it doesn't necessarily mean marathon grass. There are various local species that are less water intense than what has historically been needed.
Thank you, Mr. Colwitz. So sod is built in, baked in as a requirement in our code for the front?
Sod is something that someone would be allowed that would need to be considered as part of the overall water use, if you will. If the water requirement for the entire development is going to be too high, switching out a high intensity water using landscaping material like a traditional sod can be replaced with a sod, if you will, a grass that's less water intensive.
Okay.
Commissioner,
the clarification.
if I could address that issue a little bit. Our landscape architect is very sensitive to the issue that you're bringing up as we are as well. One of the things that we did on the Heritage Homes project is we did have sod. If you notice that project, the setbacks are huge. I think if memory serves, it was like a 40-foot setback because we wanted to keep the articulation the same as the neighbors that were built there back in the 30s and 40s. But what we did is we cut up the area in sections. So the first section in the front was sod. But after that section, we had a plant that was called Lipia, which is a very dry tolerant plant that doesn't, water tolerant plant that doesn't use a lot of water. And then behind that, we actually had drought tolerant plants. And we actually installed drip irrigation, which greatly reduced the amount of water that was used. On top of that, remember, each property had this huge 8x8 detention basin that we had to build. So any runoff of water from rain or anything like that would be captured into those detention basins. As well.
Thank you, Mr.
We're trying to mitigate that as much.
Okay. Appreciate that. Thank you. My second question was just clarification on the requirements around the moderate and low income affordability piece. Typically what I'm used to seeing is that there's a time frame, say it's 55 years or some other time where those units must remain available only to people of moderate or low income to purchase, to own, to live in. So how does this work with this development? Because the way I'm reading it, it almost seems like a person can buy it who meets the qualifications and they can sell it. I didn't see a specific time that they'd have to own it before it could be sold. profits would be shared with the city, and then it would become a market rate unit?
Commissioner, what happens is from time to time, the state modifies its density bonus laws. And this is exactly what happened with this project and the previous one. I've been involved with several affordable housing projects. The first one was the El Paseo project, which was 150 houses. That was 20 years ago. We did another project with another developer, Vista Urbana, that was in River Park. I did another project in the El Rio area as well. And all those had that a 55-year resale restriction. Some of these projects actually had a 20-year resale restriction on them. That was kind of curious to me. But now under the new density bonus law, that's sort of been removed and it is an equity share. And the density bonus law defines what percentage the city gets, and it also defines what percentage the buyer keeps. More than happy to send you that subsection of the law so you could familiarize yourself with it, but it is under the new density bonus law that we applied for this project.
I see. So for my edification, and it could be from you or from staff, is there a time frame that the unit cannot be sold or resold, or can it be turned around by the buyer as soon as they deem it fit, and then it becomes a market rate unit?
Commissioner, it's my understanding that there is no time frame, that the equity share is recorded against the property. So at the time that property is sold, then they have to comply with that equity share provision. But there isn't, I mean, theoretically speaking, somebody could live in that house for 55 years and it would still be there, right? I don't know in the case of somebody living there 55 or 60 years, let's say, and a child inherits, it becomes an inheritance to a child. Is that resale restriction still there? I imagine it still is because it's tied to the land, not to the individual person. So it's my understanding from the density bonus law that there is no sunset on that provision. It's whenever the sale occurs. And it's going to be,
right.
And what would be the value? The value would be determined by the market at that time. By comparative.
It would be, okay. So if they were to sell the house a year later after purchase, they do the equity share and then it becomes market rate.
That is correct.
I see. Okay.
Commissioner,
Yeah.
Commissioner Emilio Ramirez, Housing Director. I just wanted to chime in a little bit on your question. First of all, there are competing regulations relative to the inclusionary local ordinance and the equity share or the density bonus, which is a state regulation. Those two things have different requirements where the local ordinance of inclusionary housing requires a resale restriction and the state density bonus law requires an equity share. So there's just two different things. And when a development such as this incorporates both at the same time, then we can use the state requirements in order to comply. And that therein lies the equity share, first of all. Second, if it had been a resale restriction, that resale restriction does have a term, but the equity share does not. And so if they sell on 2 days later, then there is a math calculation relative to the equity share capture. If they sell 55 years later or 100 years later, then it's the same formula, but based on the valuation or the appreciation of the value over the course of whatever period that time was. But the difference that you're looking at is based on two different regulations, one local inclusionary housing, the other state density bonus.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Ramirez. So because the state density bonus is what applies, it would seem that law is less restrictive around the maintenance of the property as moderate or low income beyond the initial buyer.
I'm not sure that it's less restrictive. Well, it's a different standard. I'm not sure that it's less restrictive. It depends really on the term to resell. if it's 30 years, depreciation may have been significant, and that restriction may be more significant. It's just a different method to kind of accomplish the same thing, where the density bonus equity share provision allows us to recapture funds and reinvest in other affordable housing, whereas resale does not. And so it's just a different method to get to the same thing. It's also, by the way, I know you didn't ask, but given that it's two different ordinances or laws that we're trying to accomplish, density share, density bonus, and inclusionary, that's why there is an overlap of 7 total, where 4 are moderate and 3 are low income, versus 10 where 7 are for equity share or density bonus and 3 are for inclusionary.
Right. Okay. Yes, understood on that. Okay, so for me to understand better, the way that this moves us towards maintenance of affordable housing is through that equity share. So the house gets sold, it becomes market rate, we've lost a unit of affordable housing, but the equity share funds the effort to build additional affordable housing going forward. That's
the structure that the state came up with, correct?
I see. Okay. I mean, I know we've had questions and concerns around even the 55-year time frame, because when that expires, suddenly we have less affordable housing. But this is it's almost ephemeral, the sense that we're creating affordable housing when it can so easily be converted into market rate. But at least now I understand the mechanism going on. Thank you.
Does that conclude your questions, Commissioner Meyer? Yes, Commissioner Conlon.
Chair Chavez, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Conlon.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple questions and comments. My first question for clarity is for Mr. Casillas. I'm unclear on how you applied for the application on behalf of the city of Oxnard or the Oxnard Union High School District, but it sounds to me like you're the developer. I was just unclear on the correlation there.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't understand it.
It said that this was filed by Mr. Casillas on behalf of the Oxnard Union High School District. So I was unclear on your relation.
We're purchasing the site from the school district.
Oh, okay.
So in a sense, it's kind of like we're partners because we don't own the land yet. We're going to be closing soon, hopefully after we get approval from City Council, conditional approval. So because of that, I submitted on their behalf. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Yes. Thank you for that clarification. And then my next comment that will lead into my question is on condition 54 and 55. I know firsthand, being in the marketplace, how in demand the low to moderate income units are. And this may be directed to Mr. Ramirez. So I appreciate that we're taking priority to people that live and work in the city of Oxnard. But in regards to condition 55, developer and owner will at all times maintain a list of initial applicants. Would that then be 3 lists? One for regular sale, one for the mod income, and then one for the low income units and applicants?
We would not be controlling the non-restricted units, the market rate units. So those would be sold by the developer, the owner, on the regular standard. Our restriction would be relative to the 7, and the 7 would be split between 4 and 3 for moderate and low income. So we would just be only focused on those 7.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I also, lastly, are there going to be any sort of like public workshops on how moderate to low income qualified purchasers could purchase these homes? I just know they're so in demand, and I've seen a lot of people get really discouraged by being on kind of on the resale side and not checking off all the boxes and then still not being able to attain homeownership.
Commissioner,
So I'm sorry, Henry.
Commissioner, yeah, we're very sensitive to that too. I can tell you on the last project we did, which was that I was in charge of sales and marketing with from a developer, that was the Vista Urbana project. And we had 156 condos for sale, all affordable. If memory serves, we had 16,000 applicants. So we really, Mr. Nash is laughing. We really understand the demand of being born and raised here and local. So what we do, this is going to be a little bit tricky for us because with all due respect to the planning staff here, we fought there being an HOA. Part of the reason that we fought that was because it sort of ties us down to the marketing. We can't do any marketing until we have certain documents in place with the state to form the HOA. But typically what we would do, and we're going to do this as soon as possible, we start advertising on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, on all social media. And basically we start notifying the community early that these low and moderate income units are available. We ask them to come in. If they want to come in, we'll do a quick pre-qual with them, identify barriers early on if it's a credit issue or if it's income or if they're over income. We try to sort of let them know. We take the time to actually hold their hands and actually go through that with them to get them ready so that when these homes do become available, they have a higher percentage of accessibility into these units. So we as a company do that. We do start early in the process to make sure that we can maximize the amount of families that get in there. I believe that we will be doing a first come, first serve. I think that I kind of prefer lottery type of situation, because the people who really, really want one are going to be there really, really early and want to get one of these homes. But we do try to work with the community as soon as possible to identify any issues, right? So that they can maximize the amount that they're doing that. Also, I don't know if Mr. Ramirez will agree to this or not, but we will try to find down payment assistance for these lower moderate income families, even for our market rate families. We typically work with the California Housing Finance Agency. We get their down payment from the state. We get them help with their closing costs. We also get them a mortgage credit certificate that helps them make the house payment. And that typically will go for the low, for the moderate, and for the market rate as families as well. Because the reality for us as a developer is that our average income in the city of Oxnard is around $89,000. So okay, it's very difficult. And we know that we need to get as much up as we can, not only for our low and not only for our moderate, but for our market rate buyers as well. Because a lot of people make some decent money here, but they don't have $40,000, $50,000 to chunk down on a house. And that's been, people will have maybe 5 or 10,000, right? Or can gather from family members. So we need to maximize that assistance that we can get from the state and through the mortgage credit certificate to get people into these homes.
Thank you for that.
Commissioner, if I may, I just wanted to number one, confirm what Mr. Casillas just said, and also state that they have in the past, and I expect in the future, have been very conscientious about marketing that effort in the same way. So they market it that way. They recruit the buyers. We verify that they're eligible for sure, but it's all done the way that Mr. Casillas just mentioned. And in response to his final point, absolutely, we would support additional subsidy if that additional subsidy causes additional benefits. So the minimum standard of affordability is set the way that it is, and if that causes a very low income versus a low income to be able to buy the house, we're all in.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And I definitely support most of what you said, except for the first come, first serve, that if people really want this, they're going to be first in line. I know firsthand people that would qualify for these programs that are disabled veterans that maybe not on social media as often as other people, families that work multiple jobs or care for small children, medium-sized children, and also may not have the time to be on social media, like a little more savvy, our neighbors in Los Angeles that like to get a good deal down here. So everything else you said, I agree with. accept the fact that maybe the most interested people would be first. So,
Well, I will say this, the housing department does hold us to an affirmative marketing campaign. So we do advertise in the Ventura County Star as well. We do advertise in El Vida newspaper, the Tri-County Century. Any other, if you have a church group or any veteran group or anything, and they have a publication, more than happy to advertise there. We believe in getting the word out to as many people as we can. So we're not adverse to any of that. And if there is a situation that you know of where somebody has an accessibility issue, then we need to come up with a creative way to give that person access. And typically it's through a surrogate where that person maybe can't be there because there's some type of physical impediment there. So they can't send a surrogate to actually represent them as well. So
perfect. Wonderful. Thank you.
More than happy, Commissioner, to discuss any ideas you may have.
Wonderful. Will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and questions, Commissioner Connolly. I just have a few questions, and then I'll open it up again to commissioners for a second round if they have any additional questions before we open the public hearing and take public testimony. So I want to jump back to a few things that my fellow commissioners touched on. And this may be to our staff, Ms. Martinez or Mr. Colwitz. I want to talk about the fire hydrant situation. On the map that was presented in our staff packet, it shows 2 existing ones and then 2 proposed. As our vice chair had mentioned, that lots 5 through partial 11 is not encompassed in any of those circles. Does the city have any standards in regards to the number of units per fire hydrant?
Chair Chavez, that actual standard I'm not going to be able to speak to in terms of number of residences per hydrant, but there is a standard that the fire department has regarding hose pull relative to hydrants. And that's where the 150-foot number comes from. The fire code is a very thick document, very closely aligned with the building code. The bottom line is the planning set of plans that we have received and shared with other team members, and then ultimately shared with the planning commission. Those are not the same as construction drawings. After an entitlement gets through the planning process, it goes through the plan check process for both building and fire. As well as our public works and our engineering team will also look at them and make modifications to be completely compliant with the fire and building code. So it is quite possible that there will be additional hydrants or different spacing, if you will, depending on those code requirements. And Juan Martinez earlier referenced condition 75, which has essentially the dimensional criteria that the applicant will need to apply or comply with.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Colwitz. And again, the question was in regards if our city had any specific standards for fire hydrants per housing units or parcel units. And I understand that Mr. Casillas also mentioned at the beginning that this was just a preliminary drawings, that it's still making its way through the phases as it goes to the planning division. So I appreciate that response. Trash collection locations, I'm assuming based off of the diagrams that were presented and the potential entering and exiting is all going to be done in the alleyway, correct? Either to staff or to Mr. Casillas?
Sure, Chavez. Yes, that is correct. The trash access would be serviced from the back alley for all of the units.
And we're doing individual trash bins for each housing unit, or is it just one large one like an apartment complex?
The individual units typical of the single family homes. So 2 or 3 units, 2 or 3 container systems.
I appreciate that. I'm very curious in regards to, and it was kind of mentioned already in regards to the affordable units and then the potential of them being resold. It was mentioned that the city code and the state code puts these restrictions that ultimately bumped up the number of units from the 3 that they were originally proposing to now to the total of 7. Because they're allowed to resell them, and this is to our staff, or to Mr. Ramirez, doesn't this go against the city's ordinance or to the state density bonus of the fact that now they're no longer affordable units on this property site?
It's consistent with the state, I'm sorry, sir, Emilio Ramirez, Housing Director. It's consistent with the state density bonus in as much as the state density bonus imposes the equity share provision that this is allowing. It's not the same as the local inclusionary ordinance where a resale restriction would have been imposed, where the resale restriction would have a longer term. The difference is that the resale restriction doesn't allow us to recapture funds and therefore reinvest versus the equity share does. So it's just a different structure that the 2 jurisdictions enacted. So that's one thing. And we are in need of having to comply with both requirements. One, because the inclusionary just applies, and the second, because the developer requested the concessions. So we're needing to comply with both at the same time.
I appreciate that, Mr. Ramirez. Has there ever been any other projects throughout the city that has gone through this same process?
Maybe Scott can answer that question.
Mr. Kolowitz?
So there are projects that staff is telling me that, yes, as they're nodding their heads in the room, but they predate my time here with the city. The short answer appears to be Henry's prior project over on H Street had a similar scenario as we're looking at now. There may be nuances as state law continues to modify, definitely on a yearly basis, if not a weekly basis, it feels like sometimes. But and that was a little tongue in cheek. But by and large, the idea of density bonus and local inclusionary standards is not a new concept, I would say, here or in other jurisdictions.
I appreciate that information, Mr. Kolowitz. Mr. Casillas, you mentioned in regards to the HOA component of it. Now, just to confirm, and maybe I misunderstood you, the developer, as yourself being the developer, you were against the HOA or in favor of the HOA establishment?
Well, so when we came into the process, Mr. Chavez, we weren't really, I guess, aware of the local ordinance. We thought it was either the ordinance or the density bonus law. We didn't think that it was going to be both of them being combined. So our initial application was to come in as a density bonus project. And under the density bonus project, we had to build 5 moderate income units. So that was our contention. It wasn't until we got really into the process that so it's kind of been a little bit frustrating because it's a hodgepodge, right? This part of the density bonus applies, but this one doesn't. This part of the ordinance applies, but this one doesn't. So from a developer's point of view, it's like, well, I want to bake a cake, but what are my ingredients? They keep changing them on me. So we're trying to work that out with the city now. The important thing is that the project gets done. So we came in with that perspective of providing those type of units. So before that happened, though, when we came in as a density bonus project, we thought that, yeah, we had to build some low income. But since we were forced to put in an HOA, then basically what happened was that activated another part of the density bonus law that said if you're building a planned unit development, then you go moderate, not low. So by introducing the concept of an HOA into the project, right, under the density bonus law, it switched us from low to moderate, right? That's when later on the city came in and said, well, we have the local ordinance as well. Because of local ordinance, you have to provide these low income anyways. So originally I was opposed to the HOA because we were going to lose the low income units I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that's fine. I appreciate that, that explanation. I don't know if staff has anything to add to that or not.
Chair Chavez, the reason the HOA is being required is because initially at the pre-submittal review for site design, the city said that we didn't want the obligation and the liabilities that come with having the alley be in the public right-of-way. So the design basically triggered that the alley would be there would be an easement overlay that would be owned by all the property owners in perpetuity. So the HOA is being required so that the alley is maintained and there's a shared cost that goes into the long term for the ongoing maintenance, cleanup, and obviously the resurfacing and other things that would be required. So yes, the project is a planned development because of that. And other areas that could also be absorbed into that HOA agreement for the benefit of the owners in this development.
Thank you for that, Mr. Martinez. Mr. Casillas, has there, because of the fact that you're filing this project on behalf of the Oxnard Union High School District, and I understand that they're not actually having a hand in this project, they're just selling you the project. Has there been any discussion that you would provide first preference to any of the Oxnard Union High School District staff members?
That's a very interesting question. We haven't really had that conversation with the school district. I think it's something that needs to be explored as well. In the sense that I imagine that a large percentage of the people who work for the school district probably live in Oxnard. So that is certainly something that we can explore. Going back to the alley issue and the HOA again, one of the other issues one of the other reasons that we were originally opposed to it as well was, of course, we all know that when there's an HOA, there's an HOA fee. So that would also add to the burden of the buyer as well. But we also understand the city's point of view, right? Our task is now to try to minimize that damage by building, it's going to sound really corny, okay, but by building the best alley we can. In other words, instead of using asphalt, going in and using concrete, which is more expensive, but the maintenance on that concrete will be a lot less than it is in asphalt. So we're trying to mitigate that cost as much as we can.
Now, I'm very curious about that because this is not going to be gated. The alleyway is open. So technically, anybody that lives on First Street could potentially use the alleyway to cut through to get to their homes.
That is correct. And part of the reason we don't want to gate it is because, again, it's going to add more cost to the HOA, which then it's going to make it more expensive for the families. I mean, right now we're exploring an option, don't hold this to me, but we're exploring an option where maybe we can subsidize the HOA fee for maybe a period of years, right? To kind of give family an opportunity to get in, be it the low or the moderate or the market rate families, and then be able to, eventually get raises and then introduce the HOA. Don't hold me to that. That's something that we're, examining right now. But given the demographic that we have income-wise and the tremendous need that we have as a city, we're trying to think out of the box and trying to come up with creative ways to try to, make this, as affordable as we can for everyone.
I appreciate that. Mr. Martinez, Mr. Kolwitz, under the current layout of the site, First Street is blocked off from any access point to the parcel. Do we know what the traffic impacts will be to First Street? I understand it's a cul-de-sac, but now we're going to have vehicles traveling more on First Street.
Chair Chavez, there will be added the fact that the access to vehicle parking will be off of the alley. Most people living on that side of the street will enter the alley to park their vehicles in the garage. There will be folks with the opportunity to park on the street. That's still available for the community at large, including the folks that live in front. So the parking there isn't going to be restricted, but it is a short distance when it comes to the cul-de-sac. So that opportunity is there for additional traffic that would be consistent with this type of housing, typical of most of our neighborhoods throughout the city.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then just one final question, or actually two more questions. Mr. Casillas, I understand that these are still preliminary plans, but I'm curious in regards to lot number 12, where it has an attached garage to the actual housing unit versus 1 through 11 where they're separated. Can you explain the reasoning behind why lot 12 is attached and the other ones are detached, with the exception of 23, 24, 26, and 27?
I think that was a matter of trying to reach an interior yard space. So because of that, that's why I believe that one was attached.
Okay. And then for that green space that falls under the radius of the airport, is it just going to be open green space, or do you plan on putting trees, bushes, something in there, or is it just going to be a wide open empty space?
Again, to minimize the amount of HOA, those particular 2 lots will actually be sold with that space. So according to the planning code for the airport, they can't build any structures on there, right? They can landscape it. They could put recreation stuff in there, like a pool or a little jungle gym or whatever. But it's basically just land that's available for them to use, but they can never build on it. And that will actually be recorded against the deed on those properties.
Okay, just for clarification, lot 12 and 13, they're sharing that open.
No, actually, if you take a closer look to the plan you're looking at, there's a fence that runs right down the middle and divides that RPZ into 2 different lots.
Got it. Thank you.
So those lots will be sold just the way they are with large lots that way. But the families will be aware that that is an RPZ and that they cannot build on that ever. Unless, of course, the RPZ changes, right?
Of course. And then just one final question in regards to the Quimby funds fees that the developer is responsible to paying for this project that goes towards parks. To our staff, do we have any parks that are local to this area?
Chair Chavez, I think the closest park, and I could be wrong on this, would be the park that's at Fremont Junior High. The Quimby fee, though, would hit the neighborhood's account. So the Quimby fees that we collect for this project will hit that account, and they will go to, and Henry, maybe you can correct me, but if my memory serves me correct, I think there's a very, very small pocket park that I don't know if it's owned by the school or if it's a public park.
Well, if I could jump in here, so the neighborhood is Fremont South, and Campus Park is within Fremont South. So across the street is the closest park, and the Quimby funds can be used for both the acquisition of lands as well as improvements, if you will, to existing parks. So the likelihood that this development will see a very nice park immediately across the street is a high probability.
Okay.
Yeah, if I could add to that, we would prefer, I mean, we don't have an option how the city spends its money, but we would prefer that it is used on Campus Park. I was joking around with a friend of mine the other day saying, boy, it would sure be nice to have an equestrian center there, you know, to ride horses down to the beach. Because there is a lot of families in Oxnard, Latinos specifically, who have a tradition of horsemanship. So I thought that would be an interesting idea. Just putting it out there.
Throwing it out there in the world. I just real quick, Mr. Casillas, and then I'll open it up to my fellow commissioners for a second round of questioning. It was said that it's demolition of the current modular classrooms. Has there been any discussions with the school district to relocate those modular classrooms, or are they okay with it just being destroyed?
No, actually, that's a misnomer. All of the Actually, those units are in very good shape. I mean, they're really, the school district has done a phenomenal job maintaining those units. I mean, it's just amazing. Most of those units, not all of them, are going to be recycled. By that, I mean, they're going to be, some of them are going to other school districts, to other schools within the district. And I believe that the school district is working with the city of Oxnard because the city of Oxnard wants some of those as well. So I believe that all of these units will actually not be demolished or destroyed, but will actually be given to other institutions so that they can use them.
Awesome. I appreciate that response. Commissioners,
If I could jump in there really quick.
yes, Mr. Collins.
Demolition would have been the worst case scenario, which is why we did write it that way. The modular units, I don't believe any of them are to be given away necessarily. There's a purchase price, I believe, that goes along with it, / fees to cover the moving of them, even if they were given away. There is a dollar amount that goes along with it.
I appreciate that, Mr. Collins. Thank you. Commissioners, we'll go ahead and open it for a second round. We'll go with Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair Chavez, and thank you for that last question. That was one of the things I wanted to find out about, and I'm happy to hear that the modular units will be reused. I was hoping that maybe Mr. Ramirez could find a use for them for housing purposes, but anything is better than nothing. So my other question, Mr. Casillas, now to my limited ability to read floor plans, it looks like it's an open floor plan for these units.
That is correct.
I'm sorry.
That's correct. They're an open floor plan, yes.
And that's really how you turn 1,100 square feet into something, much larger. So I appreciate that. And I also appreciate your attention to Spanish revival. I think these will be very handsome units. And that's all, Chair Chavez. Thank you.
Mr. Nash, also, just to point out, the ceiling plates on these houses will be 9 feet high. So they're actually going to feel really nice once you're inside them as well. And right now, we're looking at doing a smooth stucco finish in the front, right? To keep with that Santa Barbara feel. They'll probably go maybe 2 or 3 feet into the side yard, and then from there on, it'll be regular white stucco. So yeah, thank you very much for that.
Thank you for your comments, Commissioner Nash. Any additional questions to either staff or the applicant from the commission? Seeing and hearing none, we'll officially open the public hearing for this item of the Encanto housing project, and we'll go to our public comments. What I see on the list is the first one is Ann Bull.
Yes, I'm gonna call Ann Bull right now.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Bull, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate being able to address the council. And the question that I have is for staff. But I want to first say that I understand that is the intention of this development is to have the homeowners dwell in these residences. These are family dwellings. I've lived in Oxnard now 21 years. I live over on South I Street, which is right around the corner from the development. And I love our neighborhood and our families. My question to the staff is there any kind of a condition or provision that staff has considered for investment housing? That is, investors who buy homes at market price and then almost immediately flip into the rental condition to be rented. And this can happen for investment purposes and not to necessarily improve residential neighborhoods for families. But it's an investment. So are there any conditions or provisions within any of these documents? I did take a look at the 161 pages, but I didn't see anything. So if the staff and the commission, planning commission and council would address my question, I would appreciate it. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ball. As soon as we finish all of our public comments, we will have staff respond to that. Thank you. Our next person that I see on the list is Ms. Barbara Mackey Ortiz.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Mackey Ortiz. You have 3 minutes, ma'am.
Yes, what I'm concerned about is the way the density bonus law is being interpreted. They kind of made it like a mix or match, but that is not the way it works. And the issue here really comes down to the concessions. In order to get the 3 concessions, which he's asking for, under the D2C, he can either have 24% of the total units for lower income households, which would be 6 rather than the 3 he's offering, or he could have 30% moderate, which would be 7. Because we have inclusionary, it would make sense for him to do the 6 lower income. And see, it has to be coordinated with his density bonus too. And I don't think he'd be eligible for the density bonus under the moderate, because in order to get a 23% density bonus, have to have 28% of the units be moderate. Where if he does it under the low income, then it'd be 12%. So he would be eligible for the density bonus under lower income. But I just think that we're getting slighted here. We really need 6 lower income units if he's going to be allowed to have 3 concessions, which is key to the development. I can appreciate the city playing with it, but I don't think it's appropriate under state law. And, you know, if he wants to go with the moderate, he could do the 7 moderate, but then under the inclusionary, he would need the 3 anyway for the to meet the inclusionary ordinance. So that's the biggest concern. It's not really set where you can mix or match. You should look at subdivision B2, where you have to pick, are you going to do low, or are you going to do lower, or what are you going to do? So that's a concern I have on that. Just one thing, I live on First Street. There's only 9 houses on that street. But we have been watching the movement of the portables. They've been moving them around, and they've gotten some off the lot. I was concerned in terms of what were they actually going to demolish? And it sounds like they're going to try to save everything, which would be good. So then there'll just be a few little, I guess maybe the restroom would get demolished and a few of the other standpoints. So I would like to know a little bit about that. And with respect to Commissioner Nash's concern with the police department, they park out there all the time. So we've had really good security, which we will lose, I guess you could say, once those homes are built. So in terms of, I don't know, cameras or whatever, I'm not a big fan of that, but I guess that's something to look at. So that's the biggest concern. And absolutely with the Quimby fees, they should be applied to Campus Park. That would be appropriate under the law.
Sorry, Barbara, it's 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey Ortiz, for your comments, and we'll have staff respond, and Mr. Casillas as soon as we're finished with all of our public comments. The next person I see is Carmina McGee.
Hello.
Hello, Ms. McGee, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. And actually, the previous 2 speakers addressed some of the things I am concerned with. I have attended some of the earlier meetings. I want to revisit this issue on parking and the pressure on our parking. I currently live on I Street. My home will literally abut against the new development. And we already have, for instance, across the street, there's a home that's a rental home. It's about 1,150 square feet. So it's got 6 cars attached to it with that one family. And so it goes up and down our street. And I know there's going to be these 2-car garages, but now if they're also going to be using them for family parties or visitors or other things, it just puts so much more parking pressure on. I hadn't even considered the parking pressure from the park, which we all want here in our neighborhood for sure. And I know a lot of care and thought has gone into this development. I can see that. I can absolutely see that. But the density to me is very, very concerning. And now hearing that ADUs can be built on top of that, it's just like my mind is just a little bit blown by that. So I don't know what can be done to mitigate some of those things. I like the idea of maybe having an HOA put some limitations on how many rental units there can be. I used to be an investor. I was in a development that did that, and we had to actually sell our home because they placed provisions on there that made it difficult to be a landlord who rents their house. So I know that that's a possibility through an HOA. So if that could be a consideration, that would be great. I know it would cost more money. And I'm just concerned about investors just coming in here and making this into a rental market, and essentially us having the equivalent of a large apartment complex because of the density of everything. So that's really all I have to comment on and to offer. And I really do sincerely appreciate all the thought and design and everything else that has gone into this. It's really just this density and the parking issue that are my concern. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Ms. McGee, for your comments. We'll go to our next person, which is Jackson Piper.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Jackson Piper. I'm with Ventura County YIMBY, the support, the group that supports more and better housing throughout Ventura County. And normally I would not be speaking in support of a single family home development because I tend to see that as something that we've overbuilt over the decades at the expense of everything else. However, in this case, I believe that this particular development is very thoughtful, very well designed to meet the concerns of the community, while providing housing that's going to be more attainable due to its smaller size than most other tract housing development tends to be these days. So I think that this would be a net benefit for Oxnard. And I think these will be good starter homes for Oxnard families to begin with while they, they work their way towards potential larger homes in the future or other housing arrangements. That's pretty much all I have to say about this. Thank you very much, and I hope that you approve this project.
Thank you, Mr. Piper, for your comments. Madam Secretary, I'm only seeing the 4. Are there any additional public comments?
No, that's all we have.
Okay, I appreciate that. We'll now go ahead and close the public hearing portion. We'll now move to deliberation amongst the commissioners. Commissioners.
Chair Chavez, before we move into deliberations, did you want staff to respond to any of the public comments?
Yes, even though I had said that 3 times. So yes, please, staff, if you can respond to the questions that were provided by our public comments, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And I'll take the lead here, but if other team members want to jump in, I'm here to get the assist. So there were a couple of comments regarding, investors buying the properties or restrictions on renters or other things. We don't have the ability to control for that, for the market rate units, if you will. The affordable units, those are targeted for first-time home buyers, for families that are going to be in the units. But that's really all the leverage that we would have one way or another to control for those units. So I just wanted to share that briefly. There were some comments regarding concerns with the way that the density bonus provisions have been calculated. Staff, again, community development staff, housing staff, and our legal team have looked at this issue. And we do believe that the way that the density bonus and the inclusionary laws overlap, that we are applying them correctly. There's been long, deep discussions about that. I won't go into all the details all over again, but I'll leave a summary comment that we really do believe that this is being applied pursuant to existing regulations. There were some questions about Quimby fees and could they, where they should be applied. Ultimately, the way that the Quimby fees are structured in the city of Oxnard is their neighborhood first. But staff, community development staff, we don't control ultimately where those fees go, but there's definitely is a neighborhood first sort of response. The likelihood that they would be included in any sort of campus park redevelopment would be high, since there is interest in improving campus park, and plans are in the preliminary stage to do so. There were some concerns that were raised relative to parking and the whole notion of ADUs. So a couple of thoughts on that. First and foremost, with the addition of the alley as part of a central component of this project, what that does is it replaces essentially what would have been private backyards with access directly to garages. On the flip side, what that does is it removes driveway aprons that would interfere with the street parking. So by introducing an alleyway into this project, it actually increases the amount of street parking that would otherwise not be available to the overall development. So we think that that's actually a net plus for the development. The notion of ADUs being allowed on the properties, due to state law, we don't have an ability to forbid it. But we would also say that the design of this project has been done in a fairly thoughtful way. There's a couple of things that I will share with the team. So as Henry already mentioned, there's instead of converting the garage, there's the ability to building on top of the garage. That would, in effect, maintain the parking for the residences that are being proposed as part of this project. If someone went down that path to build on top of the garage as a future application, they could also utilize a 10-foot setback, that's a side yard setback next to each one of the garages that's been designed into the project to provide a parking space essentially off the alleyway as well for an ADU. That's not a requirement, but it was a design feature essentially in terms of the placement of the garages. That was all done in the context of trying to minimize parking impacts to the rest of the community. There were also some comments that were provided about, I won't say it was concern about parking from Campus Park coming into the neighborhoods, but there aren't restrictions that we have on the books that would allow us to regulate who's parking on public streets. There isn't a street parking program that we have. So street parking would be first come, first serve, no matter if it would be residents of the community or individuals visiting the community. And the only other question that I think that was out there was, one relative to demolishing structures on the existing campus today. The modular units are the ones that are in the attempting to being saved or reused elsewhere. I don't believe that's going to be the fate of the rest of the structures that are out there. So we really are looking at demolishing the rest of the structures. So I believe that and answers all the different questions that came in during the public comment period. And of course, if commissioners have questions about that, staff is available to respond. If not, we'll sit back and watch the deliberations.
Thank you again, Mr. Colvis, for reminding me to get those questions answered from staff. So thank you for that. Commissioners, were there any questions in regards to the public's comments? Seeing and hearing none, then we'll go ahead and move into deliberation. Commissioners. Commissioner Nash. Commissioner Nash, you're muted, sir. You were doing so well too.
Once per meeting. That's that. I told you earlier. So I fully support this project. I'm very pleased with the design and the layout. My greatest fear, however, and staff has told us that there is really no way to control this with the market rate units, is to have a corporate real estate interest coming in and snatching up all of the market rate units, coming in with, you know, millions of dollars cash on the table. And Mr. Casillas and his partners would have no choice but to accept that gladly, I think. But you know, money is money. But then that will have defeated really all of the hard work that staff and Mr. Casillas and the Planning Commission has put into this project to make sure that it's a, you know, wonderful little development that, you know, we can be proud of in Oxnard. Because they will have no problem selling these houses or renting these houses with the planning, with the upcoming campus park. I mean, who wouldn't want to live here? So I understand that there's nothing we can do about that. Maybe in the future, but right now we just have to kind of keep our fingers crossed and hope that Oxnard residents and families can be the ones that move into this development and be proud homeowners. So having said that, I do support this. I do support this project, and I want to thank Mr. Casillas for his hard work.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash, for your comments. Vice Chair Rejo.
Thank you, Chair. So I do support this project by and large. I think that these types of houses, as was turned by one of the public commenters, as a starter home is sorely needed in the city of Oxnard. Really, in general, I would push for duplexes, triplexes, but obviously for the character of the neighborhood and what the developer is proposing and any other amenities, I do believe that this project is needed for this neighborhood and for the city. I'd also like to say that I appreciate the comments by Commissioner Connolly using and explaining her experience in regards to the real estate industry, how they're going to advertise in regards to the project at large, and for the 7 the low income, moderate income houses in regards to making that as advertised as greatly as possible. Even though there's already a great demand, there are some people who fall through the cracks in regards to seeing those opportunities. And hopefully the developer will be looking at all avenues to make that opportunity known for all those, obviously with those in Oxnard and those outside by the preferences that they listed or the prioritization. So if there's nothing significantly negative from my fellow commissioners, I do intend to vote to approve this project. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Rejo, for your comments. Commissioner Connolly.
I just want to say thank you to the applicant for answering all of our long-winded questions. And I also agree with what Vice Chair Arejo and Mr. Piper that chimed in on, of course, we like higher density buildings, but this project really does open it up to a lot more people. Even, you know, anybody that's disabled is going to prefer single stories, people that are older, that are on fixed incomes, and even people with small children running up and down stairs. I think the one story is amazing, and I'm really, really excited about this project. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Connolly, for your comments. Any additional comments from the commission? Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. I also support this project. I understand that the tensions associated with its development between our staff working diligently to make sure that this meets all requirements and the challenges of the developer to make this as appealing and as functional and of course profitable as possible for them. And I think those tensions have developed a project that does the best possible job given the constraints, given the neighborhood. So I feel comfortable supporting this project.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer, for your comments. Any additional commission further comments? I'll just go ahead and provide my comments. Thank you, Mr. Casillas, for working with our staff, bringing this project forward. I can appreciate the work that has gone into it. I can appreciate the design concept and the inspiration to bring this design concept to the city. I also appreciate the fact that you're really trying to fight for the everyday Oxnard resident. As being a native Oxnard resident, you understand the importance of our community values. I will also, once again, recommend that there should be some conversations with the Oxnard Union High School District in regards to potentially providing some type of preference for those staff members. There are a lot of classified employees that don't make a lot that could potentially benefit from having one of these units as well. And as you already have mentioned, many of them are Oxnard residents as well. I will also say that I don't agree fully with the whole density component of it, the resale and the inclusionary, and how somebody can take an affordable unit and then ultimately turn around and sell it. I don't agree with that. It goes against, in my opinion, the whole purpose of creating affordable units. But it's out of our control. The state says it, and unfortunately local governments have to comply with it. I will also recommend that when determining the type of employees that are working on this project, that you look local for the local labor union groups, as many of them are Oxnard residents. And we want to try to keep our money right here in our own city. It's reinvesting in our communities, and I think it's an important thing to get them back to work and to keep money right here in our own community, because they are going to shop locally at restaurants or wherever they may go for lunch or whatever. I appreciate the public providing their comments and their concerns in regards to the parking, in regards to the density bonus. I agree with Ms. Macro-Ortiz that it shouldn't be either a combination. It should be one or the other. And I believe there should be more low-income housing. As already mentioned by Mr. Casillas, is that the average income for Oxnard residents, it does not compare to what our neighboring cities are at. And we are living in communities that have multiple families living to single household or to apartments. So providing as much opportunities for home ownership, I think is extremely important. Other than that, I, like the rest of my fellow commissioners, I can support this project because of the fact that it does support our goal of trying to get people into homes. And of course, my preference in line with my fellow commissioners and the public was that those Quimby funds does go to Campus Park, because I think it's a long time waiting for it to occur. And I'm pretty sure the residents in the surrounding area are tired seeing an empty weed infested field. So that will conclude my comments. And if there are no further comments from the commission, we will be looking for a motion. Vice Chair Rejo.
Thank you, Chair. I move to find the project to be exempt from the CEQA pursuant to section 15332 of the CEQA guidelines and adopt resolution approving the planning and zoning permit numbers 20-500-05 and 20-535-03, subject to certain findings and conditions, and adopt the resolution recommending that the City Council approve the planning and zoning permit number 20-300-04, subject to certain findings and conditions.
Thank you, Vice Chair Rejo. Commissioner Connolly.
Second.
Thank you for that second. It has been moved and seconded that the project name Encanto Home Subdivision Planning and Zoning Permit number 20-500-05, Special Use Permit and Planning Development, Planning Zoning Permit number 20-300-04, Tentative Subdivision Map for Track 6054, and Planning and Zoning Permit 20-535-03, Density Bonus, and that the project is found exempt from CEQA guidelines section pursuant to section 15.332, adopt a resolution 2021 XX approving planning and zoning permits number 20-500-05 special use permit for development plan and 20-535-03 density subject to certain findings and conditions, and adopt a resolution 2021 XX recommending the City Council approve planning and zoning permit number 20-300-04 tentative track map for track number 6054, subject to certain findings and conditions. Is there any discussions on that motion? Vice Chair Rejo.
Apologies, Chair. I forgot to lower.
Okay, seeing and hearing no discussions on the motion, Madam Secretary, if we can have the roll call, please.
Vice Chair Owejo,
Aye.
Commissioner Connolly,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Yeah.
Commissioner Nash,
Aye.
Commissioner Sanchez,
Yes.
Chair Chavez,
Aye,
motion passes.
thank you for that, and congratulations, Mr. Casillas.
Well, thank you all. We do have a representative from the school district, Joel Kirstenstein, and I'm sure that he will convey the idea of trying to reach out to as many employees from the school district as possible. I think that, they should be one of the benefactors as well. Our intention is really not to sell the project to a REIT or anything like that. Our intention is really do a lot of grassroots community organizing and a lot of community outreach, and try to get these homes into as many Oxnard families as possible with as much down payment assistance as we can to help them, get into these homes. So that was the purpose of them. Sure, there's a profit motive as well, and we have to meet certain benchmarks in order to make the profit, that we need in order for the bank to approve the construction loan and the land loan, But I just wanted to really thank all of you for your kind words and for your attention to this project, for all the feedback that we received. And it's been a joy being here with all of you tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Casillas, and congratulations to you too, Mr. Kirsten, as a representative of the Oxnard High School District. Thank you for your bringing this project, and thank you to my fellow commissioners for their hard work on this one. So we'll go ahead and move to our next item, study sessions and reports. We have nothing listed. We'll now move to Planning Commission business. Commissioners, any business to bring forward? Seeing and hearing none. Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. Just a comment for all of our Oxnardians. As a reminder, we're now once again under a mask mandate in the city of Oxnard, well, in the county of Ventura, to be specific. And so I hope everyone understands the gravity of the situation that we're in, and will support that and understand the benefits that does in helping us to move out of this stage of the pandemic that we find ourselves back in again. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Commissioner Meyer. Any additional comments? I'll just say that thank you to our vice chair for our last meeting. Unfortunately, I had a class to attend, so I wasn't able to attend our last meeting. But I did watch part of it before jumping into my to my class. And I was very impressed and happy that the commission could operate without me. So it's almost like, what is the point of me being here now? But great job for everybody, and congratulations to our vice chair for leading our commission. I also want to say great work to Jessica. It was supposed to be my comments for our last meeting, where she took charge of her role as the commission secretary and did an exceptional job. It almost seemed like if she's been doing it for years, working with the commission. So she did an amazing job. So I wanted to give her kudos for that from 2 meetings ago. But again, I appreciate everyone's hard work of doing, serving on this commission on behalf of our fellow Oxnard residents. And just to echo Commissioner Meyer's comments in regards to the mask mandates are back in effect throughout Ventura County, regardless of a vaccination status. Vaccinations are still available. Just visit vcrecovers.org so you can find out additional sites, or visit the city's Facebook or social media pages as they post them daily and weekly. If there are no further comments from the commission, we'll go ahead and turn to Mr. Kolwitz for community development staff updates.
Chair Chavez, thank you for that. I'll be brief, and it's going to sound like a repeat from the last meeting, but for the benefit of everyone. City Council is going to come back into session in September, and they've got a couple of items on upcoming meetings related to work you've done. So on September 7th, they're going to be taking on part 1 of the Peninsula Road street vacationing request. That'll have to come back at a second meeting as well, but that starts the formal process. So that's September 7th. September 21st, they're going to be reviewing the firearm ordinance update that you reviewed a handful of months ago. So we're looking forward to wrapping up those items with them, and thank you for your work to get us there. As far as the Planning Commission business, the big item out there is the housing element. The environmental document is currently in the public review period that goes through September 3rd. So all commissioners, please read the document in advance of your upcoming meetings. And anyone from the public who's listening, please check out the document and provide comments to us as you feel appropriate. And your next meeting is September 2nd, and that'll be the first look at the housing element. That packet is being posted tonight. And in addition to the housing element and the policy work, we're bringing you 2 retail cannabis items that evening. So it'll be a full meeting, and that might be the flavor of meetings in both September as well as October, as I'm looking at the projections from what my staff is providing to us. So all that said, thank you in advance for your hard work, and we look forward to seeing you at the next meeting a week from today.
Thank you for those updates, Mr. Kolwitz. And just to our newer commissioners, Commissioner Connolly, Vice Chair Rejo, and Commissioner Dr. Lopez, now you really get a taste of how these long meetings are going to be like. So we'll go to Vice Chair Rejo for any questions to Mr. Kolwitz.
Thank you, Chair. I have 2 questions. The first is the recap for the City Council business meetings. I assume, since you didn't talk about the bylaws for any of those September meetings, that it will likely be in October, or could there be a City Council meeting reviewing the bylaws for September 21?
Vice Chair Araujo, thank you for that question. I don't have confirmation for the meeting date yet, but I will definitely let the full Planning Commission know once that is done.
Okay, thank you. On a more personal basis, if it does happen in October, I might be spending my birthday with the City Council, so we'll see how that goes. And then since you mentioned about cannabis, as was said during a previous meeting, I will likely recuse myself on certain items that may be be coming before the planning commission, and I will notify formally as needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Chair, for your comments. Is there any additional questions to staff? Seeing and hearing none. Since there is no further business before the commission and without any objection to adjourning, we will be adjourning to our next week's meeting for Thursday, September 2nd, 2021 at 6 p.m. Thank you again for all your hard work. Have a great night. Stay safe, and thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.